What's going on, everyone? My name is Johnny Bandon, and I'm going to be your instructor for this CCNA video series. In this video, we're going to go over the control and data planes in networking. So the reason we got to go over this is because the recent changes in networking over the past 5 years and the way networking is going, we got to understand these two planes to truly understand the differences between controller-based and traditional-based networking. And these planes aren't new, but I remember when I was first learning CCNA and jumping into networking, it was talked about, but now it's a really big subject because of how we're pushing the envelope forward with software-based networking and essentially manage control over our network infrastructure or our underlay network or our fabric, right? A lot of different buzzwords to throw around. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. So first thing, let's go over the differences between a traditional network and a controller-based network. So in traditional networking, these are where both the planes are performed at the individual network devices. So let's break that down a little bit. What this essentially means is that this router is going to be managed by this network admin here, and he's going to go into the CLI of those devices, configure control plane protocols like maybe OSPF, BGP, MPLS, so that these routers know how to forward traffic between each other. We call that the control plane. That's the routing table. That is the neighbor table, the adjacency table, right? In our routers that control how traffic is flowed, right? How traffic is sent and received. So that is the control plane. And each control plane is managed under its own device. Okay? Essentially the running config, right? Now the data plane is going to be when traffic is actually entering and then exiting an interface. It's going to be that forwarding table, on the actual wire, the packets going in and coming out. That's the data plane, right? Now let's take a look at the controller-based networking. So how does it differ? With controller-based networking, we take that control plane of all these devices and we centrally manage it so that we have our SD access, our DNA center, our SD-WAN controller that's going to control the entire control planes of these routers. So all the routing, the policies, the filtering, all that configuration is going to be pushed from a centrally managed point to these network devices. So now that network administrator is no longer SSHing or remoting in or consoling into these individual network devices and configuring the device itself on the CLI. Now we have a centralized server or application that does that for us, what we call a controller. So in a controller, the control plane management is done from a centralized server, which manages the routing and switch policy for what we call the fabric or the infrastructure layer, right? We can also call that the underlay network, right? And in that fabric where we actually have our physical network devices, the data plane is still going to be on that device because, how is a controller, going to control the packets coming in and out, like physically control them, right, on the wire, the bits on that wire? It can't, right? So the forwarding tables, like the Cisco Express forwarding table, is still going to be done at the actual individual devices, that router or that switch. So let's go over more specifically the control plane. So the control plane at layer 2 has these protocols like Cisco Discovery, DTP, VTP, link layer discovery. Layer 3 control plane protocols are, all of our routing protocols, SNMP. That's kind of like it's a management protocol, but it's done in the control plane, right? And then we can kind of also see here another example of the differences where we have 4 switches here. In traditional networking, the individual switch is going to have both planes, right? And then in controller-based networking, the switches control planes, right, are done from that network controller. So the only thing left is going to be that data plane on that switch. So then in controller-based networking, right, the control plane is centralized in technologies like Cisco's SD-WAN or SD-Access. Now let's look at the data plane. So this is where the actual data gets forwarded from interface to interface, right? So whether we're doing traditional or controller-based networking, the data plane still is in the individual device. So we can see an incoming IP packet, and we see our forwarding table here. It could be like Cisco Express forwarding table, and it's forwarding it out that outgoing interface, okay? This is actual hardware and network infrastructure. All right, so I hope this video was informative, guys, and stay tuned for our next videos where we're going to finish up our section with some IP addressing, OSI model, and some subnetting. So stay tuned.